wants to be a millionaire?
Hello and welcome to Long Live Hooky Street, the podcast where we rewatch and discuss every episode of Britain's most beloved TV comedy Only Fools and Horses. I'm Jenny and I'm joined from Hong Kong by my co-host and sister Heather. Say hello, dude.
Hello.
Today we are discussing Series 5, Episode 6, and what could have been the very last ever episode of Only Fools and Horses. Who wants to be a millionaire? So grab a bottle of Bollingers and let's get started.
This episode aired on the BBC at 8:35 p.m. on Sunday, October 5th, 1986. This week's viewing figures broke the records at 18.8 million, the highest yet. The UK number one song at this time was True Blue by Madonna, and the UK number one movie was now Mona Lisa, starring Bob Hoskins. Shall we do the episode trivia?
Okay, yeah, let's do that. So we've touched upon this before, but the same week John Sullivan began writing this episode, he and his wife had dinner with David Jason, and Jason informed him that he felt he'd had enough and wanted Series 5 to be his last. Sullivan was obviously saddened to hear this, but went away and wrote this episode to be the show's final ever installment, explaining the end of the Trotter's story in London as Del departs for Australia. The final scene of the original script would have seen Del flying away and Rodney left alone at the airport looking a bit lost. Luckily, this never got finished this way because David Jason did change his mind, albeit a little late in the day and there wasn't time to write another script, so this episode exists, but with a different ending. Hot Rod was another spark of an idea that never came to be, the spin-off show featuring just Rodney trying to go it alone with Mickey Pearce as his business partner. He's the head of comedy at the BBC, was now Gareth Gwenlyn, and he had been in discussions with Sullivan regarding all of these changes. Very fortunately for all of them, David Jason's agent started making inquiries about Series 6, so they were all very relieved. This is another episode known for being a mix of comedy and drama, featuring another very emotional scene between Del and Rodney. Definitely has potential to bring a tear to your eye. We get to see the Aussie man from Go West Young Man come back here. Nick Stringer returns in a different role as Del's best friend from youth, Jumbo Bloody Mills. Nick commented that it was completely different filming in the studio setting, since last time it had just been a one-location shoot outside the garages with the car. Also, now with the show being so popular, the atmosphere was electric. And finally, this episode is the last ever half-an-hour installment of Only Fools and Horses, and the final regular series episode to be produced by the original producer, Ray Butt, but would continue to produce for A Royal Flush and The Frog's Legacy before his time on the show finally came to an end. So, having said all that, shall we move on to our rankings for this week, dude?
Yeah, let's do that. So, as our regular listeners will know by now, each week we reveal and compare our rankings for the episode, and prior to recording the entire podcast, we independently ranked all 64 episodes. So if you didn't already know all that, then you're not yet one of our regular punters, so we'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast. We release a new episode every Saturday. So do you want to guess what my ranking is this week?
Yeah, I think you feel the same way about this episode that I do. It was another one of our nostalgic ones, but
yes,
it is not one of our favorites. I want to say yours is fair. At least in the 40s, if not lower.
Oh, okay. No, mine's definitely higher than
all right. 38?
33.
Oh, okay. Wow, you've actually ranked it
Close.
a lot higher than I thought. Yeah. Mine's lower
33.
if I didn't give that away.
Okay, so I'm guessing yours is in the 40s.
Yeah, it is. Actually, I have an IMDb match on this one, so 47, and same as IMDb.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, looking at my list right now, I say that I have it over like Homesick. I think Homesick should be higher than this for me. I never watched this episode, to be honest. I hardly ever watch it.
Now, I actually think I appreciate this episode more now as an adult than I did as a kid. And I certainly appreciate this episode more because I myself have had the choice to move overseas.
Yeah, well, me too.
In my life. Yeah, that's what I mean. So I think that's something I really relate to.
Right.
With Del's disappointment at the end that it doesn't come to fruition for him. I think that is something that I actually really feel quite sad about for Del now. And the fact that he sort of also, I mean, I'm so glad that David Jason didn't leave, obviously, because of the fact that the show would have ended. But on top of that, I'm glad because I think the ending of this episode is so poignant because Del actually proves his love for Rodney in this episode more than anything, like beyond a doubt. He cares about his brother so much that he gives up his dream for Rodney.
Yes.
And I think that is something that this is one of the only times I think that we really see that level of sacrifice on Dell's part.
Yeah, and also the fact that if he had left and this had been the thing that ended it, Dell moving away and leaving Rodney behind doesn't fit with his character. So it would have been the weirdest ending to such a great show. Yeah,
it would have left a very bitter taste in the mouth of people for Dell's character, definitely, if he'd have left Rodney like that.
The only thing to point out there is that John Sullivan said, and I didn't write down a direct quote, but the point of that being the ending was that to leave it open, because they could have easily just had Dell come back, which would have meant if David Jason had ever changed his mind, they could have just said, okay, Hot Rod is now the show, and David Jason comes into Hot Rod.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's also worth pointing out that had this happened, Patrick Murray, rest in peace, just passed away recently, would have been a major character in Hot Rod. So his whole life would have been changed by this.
Yeah, true.
And we don't know what would have happened with Hot Rod. Would it have been a success? Would it have had 20 seasons? We don't know. Like, we never will know. And I always think it's best that we don't know because, like I said, it would have been a bad ending for Only Fools and Horses, of course. But no one knows what would have become of Hot Rod or any of the future things.
I mean, I personally, although I love Rodney as a character, I think Rodney and Dell together is what makes Only Fools and Horses great. I don't think, in the same vein, I don't think a spin-off without Rodney and just having Dell would have worked either for that same reason. As we mentioned, there's so much about the characters together that complement each other, that balance each other out. You take one of them away, I just don't think the other one works without the other one.
Yeah. Well,
and
like,
that's the strength of the show.
Exactly. That's why they got another older character to represent the elder generation, because the whole concept of the show is designed around the War of Ages. They can't have one without the other. Yeah. So the whole show would have had to change. And a lot of people say that they don't think the show would have worked because David Jason, although yes, the combination's important, but without David Jason, he doesn't think that the show would have worked. And I'm pretty sure Nick Lyndhurst probably would have done it, but his heart wouldn't have been in it, because I don't need you to put your heart in it. What's that?
Just your eyes will do.
His heart would have been
from one of my favorite episodes, dude.
But yeah, that's all. Really.
So shall we go ahead and start the episode breakdown?
We start in the Nag's Head, and just like Video Nasty, the side characters begin this episode. We actually start seeing Albert tickling the ivories with his classic "I'm in the mood for love," and we pan over to the bar where we see Boise is ordering food for him and the Aussie from Go West Young Man. Oh no, wait, he's now Jumbo Mills. So the script actually provides an entire paragraph of information here on Jumbo, so I'll just read what it says. It says, Boise is at the counter, fawning over and desperately trying to impress Jumbo Mills. Jumbo is one of the old gang and was once Dell's partner. He emigrated to Australia in 1967, where he became a successful businessman. His main ability is a shrewd eye for investment. His great failing is in the field of public relations. He gets up every sod's nose. He is rather flash and blunt to the point of being considered big-mouthed. He wears clothes that show off his tan and as much gold as Dell. And he also wears a wig. So here we see that Mike is not going along with Boise's insinuation that he has an account. Is this the first time we see the Nag's Head serving food? Can you think of another time?
I think it might be.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's like a chip butty or something like that. No, I think it's all later episodes where Dell orders food. So yeah, I think this might, and especially like a full meal, like a proper plate of food.
Yeah, because for all of these like earlier episodes, they go off to get food and stuff, and they still go off to get food later. But like now, Mike is serving like a proper full menu. So this is the first time I think we've seen that, and that grows in the future.
Oh,
as we know.
Wait a second. Hang on, no. In Hole in One, they've got a
the deep fryer. But they don't serve anything, right? They to Dell.
Well, it's broken.
Yeah, we don't see them serving food. But yeah, you're right.
No, they don't see them serving food.
Yeah, but we do know now that they're trying to. Although buying a deep fat fryer off of Dell was probably a bad move. But you could argue that Mike was still kind of green at that point. Yes, so we see several examples of the script's descriptions of Jumbo in action here. He insults Mike, and then he heads over to make fun of Albert too. Albert walks up to the bar and says,
"Who's the big mouth Aussie, Mike?"
Oh, him. He's no Australian. He used to be a local lad, didn't he? Then he emigrated.
Well, that was a bit of luck, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He's quite right, though. As we know, Nick Stringer is not actually Australian, but he does seem to only be allowed to play Aussies in Only Fools and Horses. I mean, he does it so well you wouldn't know, because people have to be told he's not Australian, because he really does sound Australian. And I've not been to Australia, but I certainly watched enough Australian soaps So Del arrives at the Nag's Head and immediately chastises Albert. It shows the family dynamic immediately because he comes and he yells at Albert, but as soon as Albert tells him someone else had a go at him, he goes over there to sort him out. And I love that. I think that's very sweet.
I agree. Yeah, really nice.
Yeah. But it turns out when Del goes over to chastise Jumbo, he actually knows him.
Jumbo bloody Mills, who let you back in the country?
Look at this, will you? Talk about a bad penny, Del boy. How you doing, mate?
I'm all right, mate. All right, mate. It's Sam.
I just think it's really nice that Del sticks up for Albert, even though Del himself hates Albert's piano playing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It shows the dynamic because you can make fun of your family members, but if somebody else does, then you're fucked.
Yeah. Totally agree.
So Del parks his bot at the table and starts reminiscing with Jumbo. Boise is obviously not happy, but immediately we can see that Jumbo and Del are closer than he and Boise are.
Derek, Jumbo and I are having a business meeting. It's all rather confidential.
I've no secrets from Del. Me and him were partners back in the 60s.
That's right. We used to have a fish stall right outside the pub here, didn't we?
So a bit of history gets established here. Also, nice continuity for the Jolly Boys outing because we hear that this could have been Del's big break. The Eels on Wheels, whatever it's called, what they call it later.
Now that's interesting that you brought that up because I have a note about that not being correct later because they don't mention this incident as being Del's potential big break in the Jolly Boys outing. They talk about the eels. They talk about the eels on wheels, but they don't talk about the fact that Del didn't go to Australia. But that is more likely that would have come up on that boat sitting at the side of the water.
But they never bring that up again, right?
Just I know, and I also wrote that down that this was never brought up again, and that's interesting because it really would have been in every argument. This is exactly the sort of thing Del would have brought up when Rodney was saying, "You always hold me back." This would have been the first thing that Del would have thrown at Rodney in those situations.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, like, David Jason's indecision around this time caused this episode to be made and would have been scrapped probably if he'd made the decision long enough prior to this being filmed, because he only changed the ending, right? You'd had to write a whole new script, so he didn't, and he kept this episode. But yeah, had the decision been more clear-cut, this episode probably wouldn't have existed. Because I feel like having him not go at the end is a weird kind of twist that doesn't really make sense. I mean, it does make sense because Del would stay with Rodney, but the whole episode premise is a little bit too depressing, I think.
It is. But honestly, that's one of the reasons I like it, because again, it's a character development episode, I think, this one, which I appreciate those episodes sometimes more than the comedic ones.
Yeah. So now is a good time to just mention here that John Sullivan was exploring the early days of the character of Jumbo Mills and Rock and Chips. I think I've told you this. Jumbo and Del are like partners. And not only were they talking about, just Jumbo in general, they had Jumbo be his partner on the selling of the imported records that they talk about in Long Legs of the Law. So they started that storyline. And Jumbo in Rock and Chips is very much the Del's ally. He's his best friend. So not Albie Littlewood.
I was about to say not Albie Littlewood.
But I think I said at the time, John Sullivan was probably going to develop the Albie friendship because they were probably going to do his death if he'd continued in the show. So here's where we see Jumbo start to insult the UK, and this is a big part of his character. Del's British pride starts to perk up a little bit here.
You could find cleaner places than an Abbo's armpit.
So he says Abbo, and I wrote here, Abbo is a derogatory and offensive slang term for an Aboriginal Australian person. So Del does not appreciate Jumbo insulting the area, so I think that's why he brings up Jumbo's wig here, because it's like he's mad at Jumbo for jokingly insulting the area. Jumbo does not take it too well and vehemently denies that it is a wig.
Look, I've got a tenner here that says that is a syrup.
I have got a tenner here that says it ain't.
All right, go on, cover that then, boys. Now, listen, I'll tell you why I know that is... What? Sorry, is that your change over there?
So Del rips off Jumbo's wig and the audience finds this absolutely hilarious. So I tried to look I tried to look up the origin of syrup, and it is apparently a Cockney rhyming slang for syrup of figs, which rhymes with wigs. Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird one.
Yeah, because they use it later in the episode with the ponytail
They
wigs.
do.
Oh, they're men's syrups.
Yeah. About them syrups, he flogged them. So Jumbo is very embarrassed and he says,
"This is just a temporary condition. My doctors have assured me that my own hair will grow back, eventually."
So that line's very important for the gag that comes later. So Mike comes over with the food and he gets Jumbo's back up again. So here we can see that Del seems to have a special knack of handling Jumbo's temper. So I also noticed here that Del starts eating Boise's meal.
Yes, I put that too. I thought that was really funny. He just starts to eat as though it's his and then he's like, takes it back.
Too funny.
Yeah.
So Del is
Very
obviously
funny.
judging Boise for his over-the-top laughing at every insult that Jumbo spouts out about Brits. You can see Del doesn't pander, and Boise does. So the very big character differentiation here, because Boise's trying to act all posh and Del's being himself, but Del's the one who bonds with Jumbo, not Boise.
But then saying that, Del at this moment anyway doesn't know that he can make any money out of Jumbo, whereas Boise thinks he can make a lot of money out of Jumbo.
Yeah.
So Boise always kisses anyone's ass that he thinks he can make money out of. Even at the Trotters, at the end when they become rich, he's nicer to them. So,
Yeah, you can come to my coffee mornings now. Yeah, I was going to say that, but Del, though, Del represents here something that's true of real life, isn't it? If you see an old friend from years ago, something changes. You just have a communication with that person. Like you are able to joke around with them. Boise doesn't have that relationship with Jumbo. So Boise ends up kicking Del out of the meeting, but Jumbo makes it very clear that he needs to speak to Del. So that's arranged for later. So Del goes back over to the bar and Albert starts to insult Jumbo, but here Del defends him and makes it very clear to us as the audience that they have a very strong bond.
Tell you what, he is a diamond, that bloke. No, I tell you what, he's never cheated me. He's straight as a die.
So this becomes very important for the story. Back at the table, and Boise is struggling with the food, but Jumbo is struggling because he feels naked without his syrup. So he swoops off to the gents to put it back on. And as he's heading over to the bar, Rodney comes in, and Del is very keen to introduce him to Jumbo. Rodney does his kind of kid face again here that he always does when he meets adults. He's like the open mouth, kind of shy. There's a couple of other times he does that when he meets Aunt Reen in Frog's Legacy, I know.
Yes,
yeah.
agreed.
But I think there's been times in the past, maybe when he meets June in Happy Returns, but he always does that thing where he's like a kid being introduced to the adults.
Yeah.
He does that really well. Now we know that Del was looking after a much younger Rodney when Jumbo left. If we go from the script of that being in 1967, then Rodney would have been 7 when Jumbo left.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense, I think. We'll analyze it.
It's not
in
a
the
Marmite.
series. No, it's not a Marmite. Although
so gross.
we do have a few potential different dates for Rodney's birth, but if we stick with 1960, then he would have been 7. So that means Jumbo and Del would have been 20 when Jumbo left. But that's going off the 13-year age gap that's mentioned in Big Brother and not the 18-year age gap. So that would have made him 25. Jumbo goes off into a little bit of a monologue here to describe how well he's been doing, but he accidentally lets slip that he has a mirrored ceiling in the bedroom, which allows for more bald jokes.
I mean, I wouldn't use it for anything like...
Well, you wouldn't use it to comb your hair, would you?
You think I'm bald, don't you?
Well, it had crossed my mind.
And then this is the best line probably of the episode.
Well, I'm not.
Well, that's a hell of a party you got there, son.
That is one of those lines that every time I hear it, I can't not laugh. It's so funny.
Yeah.
The delivery, Jumbo's reaction to it, Rodney's reaction, because
Yeah.
I love that Albert and Rodney have kind of teamed up here to take the piss out of Jumbo,
Yeah.
and Del's trying to stop them. Like every time they tell another joke, it's just really
Which
funny.
is funny
the whole
because
thing.
Del is the one that ripped the wig off. He started this whole thing.
I know.
And now he's like, oh, like, you two, shut up. I love seeing Del and Rodney and Albert working together here. It's very funny.
Yes, they're great at it.
Jumbo gets a little bit angry here, but he says the same thing he said earlier, that it's a condition and his hair will grow back any day now. And he finally ducks out to reapply his wig, and we hear that he and Del are meeting up later. So Rodney and Del get into a bit of bickering over the cleanup work that Rodney had to do down the market. It seems that Del charged Harry Dando a $5 so Rodney would clean up the rubbish. While they are squabbling, Jumbo slinks back past them, and Rodney says...
When that doctor said your hair could grow back any time now, he weren't kidding, was he?
So that's the end of that section of the Nag's Head. Did you have any other notes on that scene, dude?
Just a couple of little things. Wouldn't Del have been the first person that Jumbo contacted, given how close that they were? As soon as he knew he was coming back to the UK, even though he's doing this business deal with Boise, you'd think Del would be the first person that he'd look up. Because the other thing that's implied in this scene is that Jumbo had planned all along to ask Del to be a partner in this deal.
Yeah.
Because when he sees him, he's like, oh, I've got to talk to you, Del. I've got to talk to you. Like, oh, I planned to talk to you about something already before I even saw you. So just a bit curious to me that he got all the way to the Nag's Head, had set up this meeting with Boise, and he hadn't even bothered to get in touch with Del yet. That just seems a bit strange.
I think, yeah, artistic license for that one, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to introduce him in the way we did. But yes, I agree. In reality, he would have probably come to Peckham and looked Del up immediately, yeah. But maybe he came straight from the airport. Who knows?
Maybe, but that long of a flight, I doubt it. I mean, that's a crazy long flight from Australia to the UK. But I find it interesting listening to Jumbo talk about the UK and putting it down. I found myself doing that sometimes since I moved away. You know, when I talk to people, I always try really hard not to do that when I go back home, because, you know, the UK is where I'm from ultimately, and it was my home, you know, for most of my life. Well, almost nearly half my life now I've been here. But yeah, it's just something that I think sometimes you find yourself doing when you live overseas. You end up sort of maybe looking at the place you came from a bit differently. So I just think it's interesting that they kind of reflect that in the way that Jumbo speaks, because that is quite accurate. I think a lot of people that move overseas for long periods of time always kind of see it as the grass is greener.
Yeah, that's right. And I think also, yes, especially in those days, because he went away and he's got, like, you know, the good weather and stuff, and he's got business success. It's important for the plot that Jumbo is negative about the UK, but I think it is quite realistic. And for me personally, I've been through phases. Like, I've been gone for 15 years, and a few times I've come back, I've been like negative feelings, and other times I've come back and I felt home and nostalgia. So I go through phases. I don't think it's quite so clear cut. Like, I got to say, I look forward to coming home now. There was definitely a time when I wasn't very excited about coming home. But yeah, I've gone through phases. And also I've lived in 3 different states, which you could argue are like 3 different countries. And when I lived in Texas, England seemed like I wanted to go home. I'm like, I need to leave, let's go home. When I lived in California, I was like, no, I want to stay in California. And now I'm quite neutral. I love Colorado, but I also love the UK. So
yeah, that's interesting. I just think it's interesting that they sort of put that in as like almost part of the plot for Jumbo's character, because it is true. I think a lot of people do see, they do say things. We've just covered it.
Yeah.
And obviously that joke that you mentioned, the hell of a parting, is just one of the funny. I think that's one of Albert's funniest lines in the whole of Only Fools and Horses.
Yeah, it's a really classic line. And, you know, I mean, is this a sensitive subject, baldness? I think it is. I personally,
I won't go into it too much, but I've got 2 friends in Hong Kong, 2 close friends who are male, who are very sensitive.
Yeah,
it's on our list of topics we're not allowed to discuss when we go out together,
except
because
on
they
the
get
podcast.
so upset about it. They don't listen to it.
And then I mean, we've got a friend here who thinks that his baldness is to blame for every failure in his life.
Yeah,
and so. But you never hear anybody say, like, oh, John Sullivan received a ton of comments about this. But I think for men, it's like the number one.
It can be a very sensitive
thing.
issue. Yeah, absolutely, it can. Yeah.
But it's easy for us to
some
say.
things are seen as funny, and some things aren't, and some things are seen as okay to make fun of, and some things aren't. It's just the way it is.
I always think, you know, if somebody's personally sensitive about it, that's their own thing. Like, you can't ban all comedy about a subject. And I think if you're personally sensitive, I know we both have things that we are personally sensitive about, but I don't go along going, oh, this show should be banned or that scene should be cut. I just say, okay, that's not funny to me, but I appreciate that it is to other people. So.
And if you do get really upset about stuff, just don't watch it. I mean, that's kind of the best advice to give. Then you can't get upset.
There's always doesthedogdie.com, which is a really good website.
I love that. Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, that I found that as well.
Although the number of triggers on there now are so excessive, but
I noticed that. I started off as just telling you if the dog died, hence the name, but now it's just like, there's a list of like absolutely everything that's in the. I mean, spoiler alert: if you want to go and watch a movie, don't go on that website because it tells you everything that happens in it.
Yes, it's true. But I mean, I have a few, like, one of my obscure triggers is trypophobia. But yeah, for me, the main one I'm looking for is animals. And I know most of the time animal stuff is not real, but there are times obviously that it is, and I don't even care if it's real. I don't like sad storylines revolving around animals. So I do sometimes look, and my husband has a knack for picking films that start with like really horrible animal scenes. He always just looks at me and he's like, I've done it again. So I do use that website.
I mean, to be honest, we've talked about it in the last episode being called Video Nasty. A lot of the Video Nasties that I collected when I was younger have got things in them that I knew about Cannibal Holocaust having real animal deaths in it. Ugh. I never watched that one. But quite a few of even the special effects and the gore effects are real animal guts.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Because in those days they were allowed to use them. So yeah, I mean, I didn't think about that stuff that much when I was younger, but now I'm very aware of it. Yeah. So yeah, it's as you say, everyone's got something, but you know, I choose not to watch the things that I know have got that stuff in it. I mean, I think that's your choice to watch, isn't it? If you want to watch something or listen to something that offends you, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, some people just love getting offended.
Yeah,
so.
too. I think true.
All right, so we're going to move on to the Nag's Head again, but later. So we're seeing here the very end of a quite new TV show here called EastEnders, finishing on the TV.
Yeah.
And an older man switches it off. We hear Del talking to Jumbo, and they both enter the pub, and now Del is all suited up for the evening, and he's having a laugh with Jumbo. So here, Del orders a couple of drinks from Mike, and Jumbo brings up the last thing Del said to him before he emigrated in 1967.
This time next year, I'll be a millionaire. Do you know those were the last words you said to me just before I emigrated?
I love Del's optimism here. He says there's still time, and I really enjoy the way Mike squeezes the whole banana into Del's drink, which
I put that too.
Somebody put on the Reddit the other day that was like their favorite moment of Mike's.
I've got to say that drink looks really nice that Del orders, and I love banana. So I mean, I love the fact that he knows to put a whole banana in, because that's not implied from what Del ordered. He could have just poured it in, but he knows that Del wants that extra little bit in his drinks, and he decides to put a whole banana in.
And we're definitely
Yeah.
really seeing a lot more flourishes appearing in Del's drinks now. So yes, he goes a little bit over the top with the whole banana, but it's quite funny.
Yeah.
Del and Jumbo head over to the same table as earlier, and now we are heading into the part of the episode where Jumbo is going to start proposing this business offer to Del. But his tactic is to continue insulting Britain, as we talked about earlier, and this is where Del finally cracks.
Oh, that's funny, that is, Jumbo. Now, someone else said that a little while ago. A little jumped-up general from Buenos Aires. And if you're not careful, you'll get what the Argy's got, and a good smack in the eye, all right?
So Jumbo definitely tries to switch the tone here. He brings up a very nice thing that Del did for him back in 1967.
Well, if it hadn't been for you, Del, I'd have gone to Australia potless. You gave me your last £200.
Well, no, Dad, I told you, forget it, didn't I?
Well, I never did forget it, mate. No, even when times were hard, I used to lie in bed at night and think to myself, I'm going to pay Del back.
He continues on and he gives us the big announcement.
I want you to come to Australia as my partner. Hey, I want you to front the business, Del boy.
So Del's reaction here is very mixed. You can definitely see the excitement mixed with shock and reluctance. Jumbo has a memorable line here,
They'd love you over there. They've got no class.
which is nicely timed with Del Boy eating the banana straight from the glass. It's really, really funny. So Del starts to protest and bring up a few little reasons. It would be expensive to get over there. He's got no trade. He won't be accepted. But Jumbo diffuses all of his concerns.
Derek, this time next year, you will be that millionaire.
Then, of course, we get to the crux of the story and what would have been the reason that the series ended had the plan gone ahead. Del brings up that he has family ties. Jumbo bats that away and tells him that he could just bring Rodney with him. You can put young Rodney on the payroll. Del says,
He has got 2 GCEs.
That doesn't matter. We'll find something for him to do.
Jumbo finally gets the deal. Del agrees. So here is one of the most famous lines from the episode.
Hey, Michael, please, bottle of champagne for my partner and me, and make it the best champagne. A bottle of that, Dillinger's 75. Right? That's Prince Charles's favourite champagne, that.
No, that's Bollinger's.
It's bloody true, I'm telling you.
So that famous line brings us to the end of the scene. Did you have comments, dude?
Yeah, just a couple. At the beginning, Mike says we only serve British beer.
Right,
so I just wonder if Foster's was not a thing. I don't know when Foster's was invented.
No, he's lying about that because then he goes on to say like 3 German beers. Yeah, that's just...
Yeah. I know he says German ones, but the fact that he sort of does maybe sell actual Australian beer. That's why I was wondering about Foster's. Maybe he's one of the beer drinkers can tell us when Foster's was, I don't want to say invented, when it was launched or whatever in the UK.
Yeah.
I also said that what you just said, that he's a great friend. He gave him 200 quid. This just shows how loyal Del is and what a good guy he is to his friends that he really cares about. That's wonderful. It is an amazing opportunity that Jumbo gives Del here to sort of go into partnership with him. But if I were Del, I'd feel really weird about this because I'd feel like Jumbo would always have something over me. Like he gave all this to me and he'd always have that kind of hanging over me, which is kind of confirmed in the next scene when Del talks about how much of a percent of the business that he has.
Oh, yeah, 51.
So I'll talk about that. Yeah, so I'll talk about that in the next scene. And yeah, the last joke, when I was a kid, I did not get that at all. It's only as an adult that I get that he's obviously Bollingers and Bollocks sound similar to each other, and that's what the joke is. But yeah, I did not get that at all when I was a kid.
No, I don't think I did either. I think it's meant to be implied that Jumbo and Del's relationship is not the type where one of them would have power over the other, because I think from the very beginning they are insinuating that Del has full trust in Jumbo, and Jumbo really feels that Del proved his loyalty when he gave him that 200. So it's true that things could have changed in the future, but I think the whole point of the script is supposed to insinuate that they are equals, but the 51% thing doesn't make sense in that regard. But 51%,
that's what I mean. I feel like because ultimately Jumbo's the one that has the permanent residency, presumably in Australia at this point. He's the one who's put all the money in. He owns 51% and Del has 49. So all of those things make me think that he knows that if something goes wrong, he has all the power.
Yeah,
basically, and he could use that over Del, you know, because Del would be used to that lifestyle. If he'd gone out there, he'd be working, he'd be suddenly earning all this money, not something that Del would want to give up. So if Del ever crossed Jumbo or anything ever happened between them, Jumbo would have all this over Del.
Yeah,
and I would not want to put myself in that position. I mean, this is why I'm not married.
Yeah, it is. It's risky. It's true. It's risky, and any partnership can be a problem.
Yeah.
And Del and Rodney's partnership, Del has always had that power relationship too, so he would be in the vulnerable position.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I have to wonder because I don't know anything about Australian immigration. We'll get on to later, but obviously we don't know. So anybody who's got any knowledge about this. So, okay, so we'll move on to Nelson Mandela then. The scene starts on a documentary on the Blitz on the TV, and Rodney comes into the room and asks if they're at it again in Brixton. So that's just a little commentary on how rough London can be, I believe.
The Brixton riots are quite famous, though, aren't they?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Del almost immediately in the scene arrives home holding a bottle of Bollingers.
Rodney! We're going to Australia!
Yeah, well, just see the end of this first.
Yeah, this scene reminds me of the second time around when he comes in drunk after his engagement
it does,
to Pauline.
yes.
I think we said it at the time.
We did. So it seems Rodney just thinks Del is drunk. He runs over to the bar singing the Rolf Harris song, Sunrise.
Is it coming in the morning?
Riding up the sound all around.
No.
That's the didgeridoo noise. So when Rodney realizes that Del is not just drunk, he starts to argue back a little bit here. He says that he might not want to go to Australia and says they should talk about it, but Del says he's done all that for him. So the inertia here seems kind of crazy to poor Rodney. He doesn't really know what's going on. He doesn't help that Del is actually kind of buzzed and isn't listening to any reason. Del is so excited. He says,
Australia, hey, we're the man of men, eh?
Outside of women.
So it turns out that Albert was there in 1929. Somebody told me at the time that's because women in Australia are really tall. But then I watched like Home and Away, and there were loads of really short women. So
oh my God, and they were all very beautiful, the actresses in Home and Away.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't know what that was about. Selena, Damien's got his studies. That's a very niche quote and reference for anyone that watched Home and Away back in the 90s.
I feel like people would have watched Neighbours and Home and Away quite a lot at the same time we did, because we were that generation, and everyone I knew watched Neighbours and Home and Away.
I had a massive crush on Deirdre Brummer.
Let us know below if you watch Neighbours and Home and Away.
Yeah.
So Del starts to get a little bit more serious here. He sits Rodney and Albert down to show him Jumbo's photos. Rodney gets excited when he sees the bird he likes. So, of course, leaves the country because look at that bird.
I noticed that's exactly the sort of thing that would work on Rodney, though.
I noticed Del rather subtly here swaps his empty glass for Albert's full one.
Yes.
Poor Albert.
I love that.
So here Del says Jumbo will get 51% of the shares, and so will he. So here we go. This is the discussion on that.
I actually did write down what you said earlier. I said Del gets a taste of his own medicine. 51% for him and 49%. And that's because Del always, I think I meant there that Del always plays with the money, where he doesn't split it evenly with Rodney. And he always says, like, that means you get this much. And it's never the 50%.
So maybe Del is just terrible at math.
Maybe that's what it was all this time.
So then we get a little insight into Del's plan for Rodney. And unfortunately, it's not quite what he's hoping for. Ultimately, he's going to be a car cleaner. I thought of the future episode, He Ain't Heavy, He's My Uncle, where Del wants him to clean the Capri gear.
He's going 20,000 miles just to be a car cleaner?
No, not going to be just a car cleaner. He's going to be a prestige car cleaner.
So finally, here Rodney does start to catch Del's excitement. And if you look here, you can already see Albert is hanging his head. So he's already kind of decided.
Oh,
so yeah, Rodney quickly
so
asks
sad.
Del what Albert will be doing, and Albert cuts them off.
I wouldn't waste your time, boys. Because I'm not going.
So this part makes me really sad. Yeah, like you just said.
Oh,
I wonder
so
if that
sad.
was already written so that Rodney would have Albert still in the show in Hot Rod. That's probably deliberate, right? Because they would have.
Yeah.
That was probably already written because they would have kept Albert. Why not?
But it does
Yeah.
it does make sense that Albert would not want to go to Australia at his time of life. That does make
Yeah,
sense.
I wrote here. Maybe it's just to show exactly what Albert would have said because it is a young man's opportunity.
Yeah.
And he's happy to stay behind, so he leaves.
Although he doesn't look happy
No.
when his lip quivers when he says,
I'll be all right here on my own.
and then his lip actually quivers, like goes up and down.
I know.
It's just so sad.
But then, of course, Dell
Yeah.
mentioning that he's going to look after Albert financially is exactly
Yeah.
what we would expect, and it's very touching. So he leaves the scene because this leaves Dell and Rodney alone. Rodney's enthusiasm is suddenly much higher. It really didn't take Dell very long to convince Rodney to leave the country, but I guess that shows that he has quite a lot of power over Rodney.
Yeah, and to be fair, it does sound amazing once you kind of hear the details. I know he's going to be a car cleaner, but who wouldn't take that opportunity if they were in Rodney's position?
Yeah, exactly, because it's not like he has any ties in a fortunate way. He doesn't have a job, he doesn't have a girlfriend, so they go over to the window and he says,
Dell?
Yes, Rodney, you can have the room with the mirrored ceiling.
so that line ends the scene. Did you have other news?
Yeah, I just had a couple of things, very small. So I asked how easy is it to move to another country,
Yeah.
or how easy was it to move to another country back then? I don't know the rules for Australia, but then we kind of get a little bit of that answered in the next scene.
Well, yeah.
And I also put, why couldn't Rodney do all the stuff he mentioned when Dell was trying to hint to him what his job would be? Because Rodney seemed to know an awful lot about what cars need when they go to other countries. So I don't understand why Rodney couldn't actually have been in charge of doing all that processing stuff that he mentioned, because he seemed to be really enthusiastic. And Rodney is smart. And they would need someone to do all that. So
It's true. That's just that
yeah.
gag, isn't it? That Dell always sticks Rodney with the shit job. But in reality,
Yeah.
they're both going over there. Jumbo's pretty much giving Dell the freedom. So yes, Rodney could have done.
Rodney could have done all that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
just
all I
a
said.
gag. I mean, I think when we say move to another country, as we both know, every country's rules are different. I'm just curious to know if anybody knows in the 80s, because I think Australia is one of those countries that has an opening for people who can move there for earning money. So if they moved there for work, I think he probably would have been allowed. The only reason he got denied was having a drug charge, which I believe probably would be a real reason.
That probably would.
Yeah.
That probably would eliminate you from being able to go. But I wonder, because I guess most places, I would imagine, depending on the country of origin, because I know the British passport is quite strong worldwide, most places would let you live there if you have an offer for work.
Yeah.
Which is what this would have been for both of them. So, yeah.
And Jumbo might have had to pay some sponsorship money of some kind, but it makes it sound like he would have been capable to do that. So, yeah, it's pretty plausible. We can't rip it apart without any knowledge. And if anyone has any knowledge, put it below. So we cut to what it says is 2 weeks later at Nelson Mandela. So here Dell is reading his letter of acceptance at the breakfast table. He's in his dressing gown and Albert is with him making a cup of tea. And Rodney comes in from the bedroom and he is looking forlorn. So Dell is so enthusiastic here, he doesn't really catch on that Rodney is really upset, but Rodney finally tells him.
I got a letter this morning as well.
Yeah.
They've refused me an immigration visa. They've turned me down.
So the audience very quietly says, "Oh," here you can hear them if you listen, which I feel like doesn't happen very often in Only Fools and Horses. So it's nice to see them reacting in a sad way too. Rodney tells them it's because he has an offence involving drugs, very general. So Albert and Dell are incredulous. And Rodney just keeps apologizing, but it's becoming very apparent that he thinks his rejection is going to stop Dell from going too. So
yes,
Rodney says,
But I haven't I? I've blown your big chance.
No, you haven't. There's always a way round, Rodney. There's always a way round it.
Really?
Yeah. Don't worry, Rodney. I'll find another car cleaner.
So Rodney is pretty shocked that Dell is still planning to go, but he says he will have to. He has a partnership. So Rodney brings up their partnership and Dell says he'll have to say bonjour to it. So Albert tries to interject at this point, but emotions are running high. Rodney immediately shuts him down and Dell gives him a head nod that kind of tells him he needs to leave. So this is where emotions start to run high.
I want to stay here, do you, flogging all this rubbish? I've got 24 computers here that don't work. I've got a near Persian rug that's got more food on it than a menu.
Here is a really funny thing that gets brought up again in the future. Rodney says that last year he had a golden opportunity to run his own company and he was going to be a window cleaner. So this is a continuity issue with a later episode where Raquel suggests Rodney becomes a window cleaner and he says he can't do that because he doesn't like heights. That's when Albert suggests that he specializes in bungalows, which is
Bungalows, yeah.
So yeah,
I actually, it's interesting that you mentioned that though, because I found it interesting that they use this example when there's actually lots of examples from episodes we've actually seen so far for Del ruining opportunities for Rodney. Like, why didn't they use what happened in It's Only Rock and Roll as an example here instead of something we didn't see?
maybe because that's a little bit more crazy and wild than a window cleaner. At least a window cleaner, he could have had his own business. He's not being a rock star is a little bit of a pipe dream.
But it wasn't a pipe dream. It wasn't proven to be a pipe dream. I mean, that was something that Rodney could have been like, when you stopped me being in that band and they actually did get somewhere and I could have been famous and you stopped me. I mean, that would have been a perfect opportunity to say it.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting because I'm sure there are other examples too. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any, but I'm sure there are other episodes so far that we've seen where Del has ruined something for Rodney and ruined an opportunity for him. So there must be examples they could have used from episodes we've seen, which would have been a nice callback to those episodes. That's the only thing that I just think about.
Yeah, and we've said a couple times, haven't we, that they don't refer back very much in these early series to things that have actually happened. They talk about other things, but when we get to later series, we actually do start to get a few references back to certain things, not everything, but yeah, we do get a little bit more full circle moments in the later series. So now Del tells Rodney that he will inherit Trotter's independent traders, and all the items he just insulted become suddenly appealing again, thanks to Del's new descriptions of them.
You've got 24 beautiful-looking computers, haven't you? And you've got this sort of Persian rug, you know, not bad. You sluice it over with a J-cloth and it's a real goer.
So he also says that he will give him his little black book containing all the names and addresses of all his birds. So here we get another dog joke. Rodney says,
And this is my future. 24 computers that don't compute. The only rug in the world with a sell-by date and a script to 101 Dalmatians. Thanks a lot!
So it turns pretty sad here now, honestly. So this is the bit I remember from when I was a kid. And I gotta say, I don't think I watched this episode that much when I was a kid because I don't remember it the way I remember the others. And I think that's because it's a lot of heavy dialogue and it's sad and it's mostly set. It's only in two places, Nelson Mandela and the flat. This is the bit that I remember though. Del starts to get angry. He says he's sacrificed enough for him and the conversation turns back to him raising Rodney.
When she died, who stood by you?
Oh, yes, I remember that well. I was a little 5-year-old stood in a damp graveyard wondering what the hole in the ground was for. I remember all the other people saying, I wonder what's going to happen to poor little Rodney. But I had no need to fear, did I? Because suddenly a vision appeared from beyond the silhouette of the gasworks. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Del Boy. I, Del Boy, will look after this small waif. I will bring him up in the ways of Del Boy. He will sell iffy watches from old suitcases on street corners. And I will also teach him how to drive a three-wheel van while pissed out of his skull.
And I did, didn't I?
Yeah, that whole speech is so memorable. And again, it's that setup of Rodney standing behind Del, with Del facing the camera as well. I feel like that's used quite a few times in the series, especially during emotional bits. It reminds me of the scene in Strained Relations a little bit.
Yeah.
But this time with Rodney doing the speech and Del listening, whereas in Strained Relations, it's Del doing the speech and Rodney listening.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was deliberate. I mean, John Sullivan liked to write the emotional dialogue and he knew that had been a success, showing the vulnerable side. So having them argue like this and then talking about losing their mom at a young age, yes. It's all very touching and sad. And yes, just seeing Del's face while Rodney's yelling at him.
I mean, he did well to keep a straight face while Nick Lyndhurst was doing I, Del Boy, will look after this small waif.
I remembered
So well
that when
written.
I was a kid. I loved that. Is it a bird? Is it a plane?
Dun, da, da.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
So Rodney's last little thread of hope here is trying to convince Del that as the country declines, they are likely to see an increase in business. It's kind of like an advertisement for the show a little bit here, where he talks about the way that, you know, the people they do business with. But it also depicts how
Yes.
essential people like the Trotters are in a struggling economy, because they show the underdog role, and they're doing what they think is a good thing, and it's always been depicted in the show as being a good thing. They're not just trying to take advantage. They're actually trying to help lower income people and give people access to stuff that maybe they wouldn't have access to. So
But I think the real opportunity lies right here. Oh, Del, what happens when a country's in a depression, eh? Money gets tight, doesn't it? People can't afford to pay the inflated shop prices, so what do? They come to blokes like us, don't they?
it doesn't work though. Rodney gives up and he storms off. So Albert comes out of the kitchen and he says that he heard the whole conversation. So here I feel like Del is quite deep in thought, and then the scene just fades out. Any notes on that scene, dude?
I just put this scene is heartbreaking and poignant. I put it's one of the rare times that Rodney ruins it for Del.
Mm-hmm.
And I also put that I put Del gets him back and then some in the next episode. And I also put, is this the first time that he's called Rodney a dipstick?
Dipstick.
Oh, goodness. I feel like there's no way that could be the first time. But maybe it is. Yeah, it could be, because I don't remember us talking about that. And
I don't think we've talked about dipstick either before this.
Sometimes it blows your mind. It's like how we said we haven't had during the war yet. And you always think during the war was synonymous with Albert. This is the end of the second whole series of Albert, and we haven't had during the war. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to confirm that.
Let's see if we can find a before instance of that being used. But yeah, that's all I had.
I just forgot that I wanted to mention, because like they say, this is like when they're talking about why Rodney got declined, and Del says, oh, you know, he only took 2 bloody puffs, and he says, oh, it doesn't say that. If you
say that on your file.
Wouldn't it be funny if it did?
If it did.
He only took 2 bloody puffs.
Oh, he only had 2 bloody puffs. It's all right. We won't stop him from getting his visa then.
Yeah, but that is the way the law works as well, though. Sometimes you do one tiny little thing and it gets stamped as being like, you know, a certain level of crime.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how little you did, how little you dipped your toe in. Sometimes you've ruined your whole future. Not very fair. But...
Well, yeah. I mean, you talk about like theft, stealing like chewing gum or stealing 1,000 quid from the safe. It's still theft a lot of the time, and it won't say what you were done for. It just say that you were a thief.
Okay, so we cut to later that night, and the music is cutting out at the end of the TV broadcast again. So we heard that music before in Long Legs of the Law. Del is sitting solemnly in the chair, flipping Jumbo's business card over. Albert comes and tells us that Rodney is late. So here we get a little speech from Albert where he tells Del that he should go and not look back. He will always regret it if he doesn't. I wonder if this was part of the original script. It must have been.
I've got to say I agree with everything that Albert says here.
Yeah, even though he doesn't mean it, does he? We find out.
Yeah.
Glad my advice helped. Yeah, so it makes it look like Del's already made the decision here, and he hopes Albert will explain that to Rodney someday, as he holds his hand with Albert sitting in Grandad's chair.
Yeah.
I know I wrote at some point in one of the earlier episodes that Grandad's chair was gone. It's not, because
No, it's in it all the way through to here, yeah.
It's in all the way to the Frog's Legacy, because they make a note in Lovely Jubbly that was the last time that Grandad's original chair was used, so I made a mistake. I'm so sorry I made a mistake.
Sorry, I made a mistake.
I made a mistake.
I'm so sorry.
My
My
wife
wife has made a mistake.
So now Del announces that he's going to phone Jumbo and tell him what time he will be arriving. He comes to the forefront of the shot and dials. He starts off jovial, but then we find out.
Rodney won't be coming over. No, we got a few snags this end, see? Me? No, I won't be coming over either.
So you can see Albert in the background reacting to this. He smiles like crazy when Del says he's not coming. So
yeah. Also, you can feel the atmosphere really change in the room when he says that line as well. I remember even as a kid, I felt that change, like in the atmosphere when he said, "Me? No, I won't be coming over either."
Yeah.
Like there's such a change in mood. It's brilliant.
I mean, when we talk about John Sullivan had to make some pretty swift changes to the script, it seems like he only changed the last 2 minutes of the episode.
But you know what? You couldn't tell. And you know what? That's maybe why it worked so well, because we really thought until Del said that he was going.
Yeah, right. And I wonder, did the original audience think this was the last episode?
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like John Sullivan did right up until a few weeks before filming. So yeah, maybe the audience are sitting there thinking, oh, is this really happening? Is this the last episode?
Yeah.
It could well have been. But yeah, so Albert is really happy and he says that, you know, I'm glad my advice went to your heart or whatever. But I mean, you listen to Albert's, what he said, and you think about Del's point of view. Like you said, logically, you probably should have gone, but the family bond is stronger. So Del looks very full on, but he does tell Albert that it's a big weight off his shoulders. So Albert goes to bed very happily and Del is slumped in the chair. This is where Rodney arrives back and he starts to apologize to Del over by the bar, and Del tells him here that he's not going. So Rodney seems sad at first, but Del tries to stay cheery for Rodney, and he does the same thing Rodney did earlier. He gets excited over the idea that Britain needs blokes like them. But you can tell he's covering his true emotions here with the fake excitement.
Yeah.
So Rodney confirms that they're still partners, and they both kind of start talking through the pain here. Rodney says,
Hey, Del. This time next year, eh?
I know. It sounds like they really, neither of them mean anything they're saying.
yeah, it does seem that way. They're both kind of saying, we'll be okay, we're going to stay here. So
Right? Yeah.
So
It's
he
that kind of like, right?
Rodney goes to bed and leaves Del alone at the bar. So this is that sad moment. Del finishes his drink and we get a really good David Jason sad moment. He looks around the room and says,
This time next year, who wants to be a millionaire?
he mouths, I do. I don't know if we can put that in. So, and the lights go out and the credits kick in. So a sad
With
ending.
zero laughter, because it's not a funny ending. It's
not funny.
Very cold. Yeah. I personally am really glad that they didn't end it like this.
Of course.
Because it would have been a very sad ending to such a great comedy series.
I mean, it wasn't going to
if they'd
end
ended
like
on
this,
note.
were they? Because they were going to have Del flying away and leaving Rodney
Well,
alone.
no, what I mean is that would have been a very sad ending to the comedy series. Del flying off and leaving his sad Rodney at the airport. I mean, if you consider how upset Rodney was in the scene where he's talking to Del over his shoulder, and that close up of Rodney's face at the end as he watches his brother that he loves and cares about fly off, would have been absolutely. Oh, it would have been so depressing. It would have been a tear fest. So, I'm really glad they didn't end it both ways. I'm glad that it didn't end here, basically, either way that it had gone. So that's important. But, the thing that Albert says when he says that Rodney would learn to stand on his own 2 feet if Del wasn't around, I am a firm believer in that. I think throwing people in the deep end really helps them. I know a lot of people don't agree with that way of doing things, but I think deep end stuff is good because you do have to learn to swim or you sink. And some people sink, admittedly, but I think Rodney was the sort of person that would have swam if he'd been given the chance, because he tried to go out on his own a few times, as is mentioned in this episode.
And he always messed up, but he always got saved by Del. And sometimes having Del around might have been a negative because he didn't learn a lot of the stuff for himself. I mean, you do see he kind of moves away from Del a little bit more in the future, and he's still kind of a plonker. But I feel without Del around at all, he would have had to become a lot more competent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also as well, I mean, let's face it, Rodney always says he doesn't want the money as well. But with Del sending money, which he would have done because Albert was still there, he'd have been sending probably thousands and thousands of pounds back all the time. Rodney would have taken every penny, no problem, and used it, you know?
Yeah.
So, and it's 50-50 with their relationship, right? So 50% of the time, he helps Rodney get back on his feet, and 50% of the time he hinders Rodney's ability to go out and do things on his own, and he ruins it for him. There are many times that Rodney might have been successful without Del there, and we'll talk about that in the next episode. So yeah, I think that if it were me, I would have gone, because I'd have spent my entire life wondering exactly what Albert says. And that's why I went to Hong Kong. I got this opportunity to move here for 9 months, and I was terrified about going, but I knew in myself if I hadn't gone, I would have regretted it. And of course, I was only planning to stay for 9 months, and I ended up staying for 17 years and then some, because, I'm not planning to leave anytime soon. And I've made a life for myself here. But it was terrifying, but also exciting. Yeah, I also, just again to reiterate what I said earlier, I just said I'm amazed this never gets mentioned again in future episodes. It's such a pivotal moment, especially in the scene in the Jolly Boys outing where Del brings up the seafood business that he had with Jumbo again and laments that he could have made it from that seafood business and not from this incident.
I think that's probably deliberately written that way because John Sullivan wouldn't have been able to have Rodney be, you will make it encouraging and genuine and Jolly Boys outing because Rodney was the reason he didn't go. Yeah.
That's what I mean, but that is a huge continuity issue because it was something that, because Del is literally like sad in that moment, could have made it, could have, like he's quite pouty about it. And yes, like this was Del's big break. Out of everything we've seen so far, this would have had the potential to make Del a millionaire, as Jumbo says earlier in the episode.
Sure.
So yeah, it's just crazy to me that this was never brought up again.
Yeah, right. I was just thinking that like Del mulling over this decision was probably pretty realistic and like he could draw from his own experience because David Jason mulled over the decision whether to leave the show or not. So yeah, we're seeing quite a lot of method acting here.
Yeah, maybe that wasn't Jumbo's business card. Maybe that was his agent's or John Sullivan's business card.
Yeah, it must have been such a difficult decision for him because he felt like he was done with the part. But, you know, obviously the best in a lot of people's minds is yet to come. And I agree. I mean, yeah, we haven't got to them yet. So we know already my favourite episodes, like quite a few of my favourite episodes are in the coming series. A lot of my top 10 is in the coming. Yeah. So yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the awards for the week.
What are you on about? I won!
Okay, so as always, we have 3 awards to announce this week, and we will start with our plonker of the week.
Und plonker, yeah?
So for the plonker of the week, we'll each nominate a plonker and we'll discuss and decide who wins. So why is Rodney your plonker?
He's not. Yeah, I didn't put Rodney as the plonker.
I put Rodney as the plonker.
Yeah, that's because I looked at my notes and I don't ever remember who I put because I write these so far ahead. But Jumbo I put, and I think that's because I couldn't think anybody was really in the wrong here. And
I think Rodney's in the wrong for guilting Del into not going.
I thought Jumbo was the plonker because he kept insulting Britain. But yeah, I see your point of view. Yeah, you want to elaborate on why you think Rodney's the plonker?
Yeah, I just think that if your brother or sister has an opportunity, it's like when I found out you had the opportunity to go to America, which at the time when you got the opportunity to move there, I still really wanted to live in America. It would have been like me turning around to you and saying like, "Oh, you can't go to America. That's my dream." Like, what are you doing? Like, just trying to stop someone from doing something that means so much to them for your selfish reasons. I don't think that's okay.
Well, ordinarily, yes, in an equal opportunities world and everything. But Del and Rodney's relationship is very different to mine and yours and to most siblings. I mean, it is like a parent leaving a child in Rodney's eyes. And I kind of understand.
Yeah, but Rodney is in his we assume
he's 24. He's never getting any older.
Forever.
Yeah.
But Rodney is an adult. Rodney is old enough, and again, Rodney always goes on about wanting to go on his own and do things on his own and get away from Del and like fly out of the cage. And this opportunity was it. This is the time that Rodney could have been like, okay, yeah, you go, I'll be all right on my own. And he stopped and he guilted Del into giving up an opportunity that would have literally been Del's dream.
It's true, actually, because he doesn't just say, you know, oh, that's a shame, I really don't want you to go, but I understand. He goes really crazy guilt trip. So you're right.
He guilts him. Yeah, massive guilt trip.
And we haven't really made Rodney the plonker very many times. So, and he really should be. So yeah, let's make it Rodney then.
So Rodney is this week's plonker of the week. Okay, so Jenny has chosen the best line of the episode. I know which one you're going to pick. Surely you're going to pick this.
Well, I actually put 2 options, but yes, I think it should be a hell of a barn you got there.
You got there, son.
I put Bollinger's, but yes, I think that they're both equally good. I think that we'll give it to the hell of a barn you got there, son.
So I've chosen the best moment. So I had 2 moments here. Both of them are part of the sad bit of the episode. So the first one is is it a bird, is it a plane speech that Rodney does to Del. I think that's probably one of the most famous bits of the episode. And I think that's used in a lot of the clip shows of Only Fools and Horses when people are looking back on it. Or the very end of the episode where Del has that little moment on his own and he sings like, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire to himself and leaves the room. Those 2 moments stand out to me, but I guess if I have to choose one, I'll give it to Is It a Bird? Is It a Plane? Because it's got the brilliance of being comedic and sad and poignant all at the same time, which is what we're always going for in Only Fools and Horses. So
that sounds good, yeah. The only honourable mention I would give is to the moment Del rips the wig off because the audience lose it. So that's a really popular moment, I think, in the eyes of
it's very
fans.
funny, yeah. I mean, for me, obviously, I remember the wig bit because of the parting joke, but yeah, the is it a bird, is it a plane speech, and about Dell's sort of savior complex with Rodney and everything. It's just so well done, and it really makes you picture it, like Rodney being a little kid in the graveyard and then like looking over and seeing like the smoke, and then Dell like comes up. You can just picture how it would have gone, you know. So it's very good, the imagery that it conjures.
Yeah, I agree. Good choice.
Okay, so if that's everything, drink up, we're leaving.
Okay, so that about wraps it up for this week. Join us next week when we'll be discussing the 1986 Christmas special, A Royal Flush, uncut version. Actually, it'll be part 1 because that episode's going to be divided into 2. So, yes, we are watching the uncut version. So that's 75 minutes of episode
breakdown.
And so it's going to have to be split into 2. I know people have probably been waiting for this one. So very exciting. We'll see you next week. Until then.
Sunrise come every morning,
Lighting up the ground all around.
Au revoir, listeners. If you like what you hear and want to contact us, you can email us at longlivehooky street podcast@gmail.com. All one word, no spaces. Bonjour.